the gift of being forgotten by the world. We begin in a place that most people never want to enter: the shadows. Not the kind of darkness that comes from the absence of light, but the kind that exists parallel to the world everyone sees. And the most mysterious thing? You don't even know you're in it until you realize you've been living outside of time, outside of society, outside of even your own identity. That's the reality of the dark chosen ones. They don't live in the same world as everyone else. They walk beside it. They see what others cannot see, feel what others are numb to, and hear the voice behind the silence. But let me ask you this: have you ever felt like you were born into a script that wasn't written for you?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lessons.
I have. And maybe you have too. Because those who are chosen by the shadows aren't chosen for comfort, applause, or recognition. They're chosen for depth, for truth, for transformation. But the shadow doesn't choose lightly. It watches. It waits. It observes your silence, your suffering, your solitude. And when everyone else turns away, the shadow leans in. It whispers, "You are ready." And that's when the real journey begins. Not the one filled with love and light and crystals and mantras, but the one where you learn that being invisible is your greatest power. That being misunderstood is your divine protection. That being alone is the only way to finally hear who you are underneath all the noise. You see, the dark chosen ones are not evil, but they are feared because they reflect the truths people aren't ready to face. They walk into rooms and shift the energy. They don't speak much, but their presence speaks volumes. They're the ones who see the lies in the eyes of smiling faces. They feel the wounds behind every word. And they know deep down that this world is not what it pretends to be. And that's the curse and the blessing. Because once your eyes have opened, they can never close again. You can't unsee the truth. You can't unfeel the pain. And you can't unknow your purpose, even if you try to run from it. But let me tell you something they never teach in school, church, or therapy. The shadow is sacred. Not because it's pleasant, but because it's honest. Most people are addicted to light. They chase it, worship it, decorate their lives with it. But the truth is, light without shadow is blindness. Only those who have walked through hell can see heaven clearly. And that's why the dark chosen ones are so rare. They've been through soul-deep deaths, not once, but many times. They've been reborn without ceremony, without applause, without any guarantee of survival. And yet they rise, quietly, powerfully, unshakably. Now I ask you, why do you think you've lost so many people? Why do you think you've been betrayed, abandoned, misunderstood? It's not because you're broken. It's because you're shifting dimensions. You were never meant to fit. You were meant to awaken, to disrupt, to remember. The loneliness you feel is not punishment, it's preparation. The silence around you is not empty, it's filled with codes. Codes you can only decode when you stop looking for validation and start listening to your own frequency. That's where your true power lives. not in being liked, but in being aligned. But let me warn you, this path will strip you. It will take everything that isn't you. Your ego, your attachments, your illusions, your fake friendships, your performative spirituality. The shadow doesn't let you pretend. It demands authenticity. Brutal, raw, terrifying authenticity. And when you finally surrender, you realize something shocking. You were never meant to be saved. You were meant to remember that you are the one holding the key. Always have been, always will be. So I want you to sit with this question, and don't rush to answer it. Who are you when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when no one is coming to rescue you? Because that version of you that's silent, unseen, uncelebrated warrior is the one the shadow chose. Not the version you post online. The version that cries alone at night, the one questioning their sanity, the one that feels like a misfit in every room. That's the one the shadow anointed. And when you accept that, when you stop trying to escape the shadow and start learning from it, everything changes. You don't just survive, you alchemize. You rewrite your DNA. You become the storm, the silence, the sanctuary. And you realize that the shadow was never your enemy. It was your initiation. So if you're listening to this, chances are you've been chosen too. Not by the world, but by something older, deeper, wiser. And now it's time to remember who you are. The gift of being forgotten by the world. There's a moment in every dark chosen one's life when they realize that the world has forgotten them. Not just ignored them, forgotten them. Friends fade without reason. Family stops understanding. The invitations stop coming. Opportunities vanish. You're still breathing, still existing, but it's as if you've been erased from the collective awareness. And that moment, it hurts. It stings like truth. Because at first, you interpret it as rejection, as failure. You wonder what you did wrong, why you're being punished, why your presence feels like a disturbance in every space you step into. But what if I told you that this forgetting is a gift? You see, the world cannot forget what it truly owns. It only forgets what no longer plays by its rules. When you begin awakening, when you start shedding your false self, the matrix, this programmed reality, can no longer recognize you. You become invisible to the frequency of superficiality, to the networks of ego, illusion, and manipulation. The forgetting is not a curse. It's a divine quarantine. It's the universe saying, you are no longer food for the system. And that is the beginning of your liberation. But it's also the beginning of your loneliness. And let's not romanticize it. This loneliness is not poetic. It's brutal. It's empty. It's the kind of silence that echoes. You start questioning your value, your sanity, even your existence. But here's where the wisdom lives. The world forgets you so you can remember yourself. Because memory is sacred, and your soul has been trying to remind you of who you are long before your mind could understand. This forgetting by the world is the unlearning. It's the space in which you can finally hear the voice beneath all the noise, the voice of your higher self. And that voice doesn't speak in words. It speaks in knowing, in chills, in synchronicities, in dreams that feel more real than your waking life. And slowly, you begin to realize you were never lost. You were just hiding behind who you were told to be. And in this forgotten space, you begin to rebuild not as a product of the world, but as a vessel for truth. You don't need their approval anymore. You don't need their applause. You don't even need their understanding. Let me tell you something most spiritual teachers won't. Your awakening will make you unrecognizable. And that's the point. You will shed versions of yourself that once felt essential. You will outgrow beliefs that once gave you comfort. You will stop resonating with people who once felt like home. But they were never your home. They were your holding cell. And now you are free, but freedom is not soft. It is sharp. It cuts ties, illusions, and false identities. And that's why most people run back to the familiar. They fear the void. But the void is the womb of creation. It is in the forgetting that you become the author of your reality, not just a character in someone else's script. So I ask you now, if you were not trying to be seen, loved, or accepted by anyone, who would you become? What would you create? What truth would you finally speak? Because that's the real you. The one who emerges when there is no audience. That's the version the shadow chose. That's the version the world had to forget in order for you to finally remember. And here's the paradox. The more forgotten you are by the world, the more remembered you become by the divine. The less you are celebrated externally, the more you are elevated internally. You begin to hear your own intuition louder than any advice, louder than any trend, louder than any external voice. You begin to operate from a frequency that the world cannot manipulate, cannot monetize, cannot control. You become the glitch in the matrix, the anomaly, the sacred rebel, and that is terrifying to those still living in illusion. This is why people pull away from you without explanation, why lovers leave, why family members distance themselves. It's not because you're wrong. It's because your vibration is a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They reflect, and most people cannot face themselves. So they blame you. They exile you. But remember this, exile is not the end. It's the beginning of your sovereignty. It's how you leave the hive and become the queen, the king, the oracle of your own destiny. And when you embrace this exile, when you stop mourning your forgetting and start celebrating your remembering, something magical happens. You stop needing. You stop chasing. You stop proving. You start being. And that is the most dangerous, powerful, and revolutionary act in a world built on performance and pretense. You begin to speak only when truth burns in your throat. You begin to move only when your soul commands it. You begin to attract not people, but energy's resonance, not relationships. Alignment, not attention. But don't get comfortable. The forgetting is only the first stage. What comes next is even deeper, the rebuilding. And this time, you're not building from wounds. You're building from wisdom, from scars that have become sacred, from silence that has become sovereign, from solitude that has become your sanctuary. So I leave you with this question. If no one ever validated you again, if no one ever clapped for your growth, if you had to walk this path completely alone, would you still walk it? Because that is the true test of the dark chosen one. And if your soul just whispered yes, then congratulations. You are not forgotten. You are being forged. Seeing the world through shadow eyes. When your eyes have adjusted to the darkness, you begin to see what others can't. Not metaphorically, literally. You start noticing the invisible threads behind people's words. You feel the energy behind a smile. You detect the lie hidden beneath love. And that's when the loneliness deepens, because now you're not just forgotten by the world, you're separated from it. Well, not by force, but by frequency. You see illusions where others see reality. You see patterns where others see randomness. You see spiritual contracts where others see relationships. You see karma where others see coincidence. And this is the weight of the shadow sight. No one tells you that awakening will make you question everything. Your job, your values, your memories, nothing is safe. You start remembering things you never experienced in this lifetime. You meet people and feel like you've known them beyond lifetimes, or sometimes you feel instantly repelled without knowing why. That's your soul seeing what your ego cannot. And the more you trust it, the more the veil lifts. But with that clarity comes responsibility, because now you know. And once you know, you can't pretend anymore. You can't go back. You can't unsee the games, the manipulation, the programs running behind most people's lives. So now you're walking through the same rooms, but you're not really in them. You're walking through the same cities, but you feel like a ghost, because you're not living in the same layer of reality as others. You're walking in the shadow realm, a reality that overlays this one. A deeper, more symbolic, more energetic layer where everything means more than it appears. You see spirits in people's eyes. You hear the screams behind their silence. You feel the soul fatigue in their handshake. And you start realizing most people are asleep, not because they're weak, but because waking up would destroy everything they've built. And that's why the dark chosen ones live in the shadows, not because they're hiding, but because they're protecting. Not just themselves, but the fragile structures of the world. If we all saw the truth at once, society would collapse overnight. So the chosen ones carry the burden quietly. They transmute the pain of the collective. They walk through emotional landmines that aren't theirs but feel like they are. They absorb, alchemize, and release, not for applause, but because they were built for it. Their souls were forged in cosmic fire. That's why they're still standing. But let's get practical. What does it mean to see through shadow eyes in the real world? It means you stop reacting and start perceiving. When someone attacks you, you don't fight, you observe. You ask, what pain is this person projecting? When you face rejection, you don't shrink, you decode. What soul agreement just ended? When you're isolated, you don't despair, you listen. What am I being called to remember in this silence? You become a mystic in the middle of the mundane. You live symbolically. Every interaction becomes a message. Every delay becomes divine. Every pain becomes a portal. But this level of perception comes with a price. You become unrelatable. You speak in frequencies, not small talk. You lose interest in gossip, in drama, in the ego theater most people perform in. You crave truth like food. You hunger for authenticity. And you start attracting people who either fear you or are inexplicably drawn to you. Because shadow eyes don't just see, they reflect. And when people look into your eyes, they see themselves. Not the version they show the world, the real version. And that can be terrifying. That's why people say there's something about you I can't explain. Or being around you feels intense. You're not intense. You're just illuminating what they've buried. And this is where discernment becomes vital. Just because you see someone's soul doesn't mean they're ready to meet it. Just because you feel someone's pain doesn't mean it's your job to heal it. The shadow reality is seductive. It makes you believe your insight is a mission. But wisdom is knowing when to speak and when to just see. Not everything must be revealed. Not every truth must be spoken. Sometimes your power is in your silence, your knowing, your presence. That's what changes people, not your words, but your vibration, your stillness, your refusal to betray your inner truth. But I must warn you, the more you see, the more you will grieve. You will grieve for the world, for its blindness, for its pain, for the children who were never seen, for the elders whose wisdom was never heard, for the love that was never expressed, for the truth that was never spoken. Your heart will break over and over again. But each time it doesn't weaken, it expands. And in that expansion you become a vessel, not for fixing the world, but for holding it, holding space, holding grief, holding the tension of opposites, pain and beauty, death and rebirth, shadow and light. So I ask you again, from this deeper place, are you willing to see what others refuse to see, even if it means you can never go back? Are you willing to walk amongst the blind, not with arrogance, but with compassion? Because that's the real calling of the dark chosen one, not to escape the world, but to walk through it as a mirror, a mystery, a myth come to life. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are simply adjusted to a depth that most people will never touch. And your job is not to dim it. Your job is to master it, to refine it, to channel it. Not through ego, but through presence, through clarity, through sacred neutrality. Because when you truly see, you no longer need to prove. You just are. And that is your power. The final initiation, death of the false self. There comes a moment in the journey of every dark chosen one where silence becomes louder than sound, stillness becomes more intense than action, and the face in the mirror no longer looks like you. This is the final initiation, the death of the false self. Not a metaphor, not a poetic idea, but a real, visceral inner death. And it feels exactly like dying. You don't just lose your identity. You lose your desire for one. You stop trying to be anything. You stop trying to be seen, understood, or even healed. There's nothing left to protect, nothing left to prove, nothing left to pursue. You become empty. And in that emptiness, something sacred is born. But before that rebirth, there is the void. The terrifying, vast, infinite void where all lies dissolve. The place beyond personalities, beyond preferences, beyond even pain. It's the space where you realize you are not your name, your story, your wounds, or your wisdom. You are something older, something formless, something that cannot be owned or described. And that realization doesn't come with fireworks or enlightenment music. It comes with surrender. Brutal, soul-wrenching surrender. You fall to your knees not in defeat, but in release. And in that moment, the shadow smiles. Because now, finally, you are ready to remember. You see, the death of the false self isn't tragic. It's sacred. It's the moment the mask disintegrates and the soul steps forward. It's the moment you stop performing and start existing, not as a role, but as a presence. And that's when you understand something profound. You were never meant to become someone. You were meant to unbecome everything you were never meant to be. And when you do, what's left isn't a new identity. It's truth. Pure, raw, unfiltered truth. The kind that doesn't speak, but radiates. The kind that doesn't seek, but attracts. The kind that doesn't try, but is. And in that state, you no longer need to fight the world, because you've transcended the battle. You've become the still point in the storm, the watcher behind the eyes, the breath before the thought. And from that place, you move differently. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You act less, but your actions ripple into higher dimensions. You stop reacting, and instead, you respond with presence, with power, with precision. You become a living transmission of frequency, not because you're trying, but because you've cleared the distortions. You've emptied yourself of all that is not you. But let me be clear, this death doesn't happen once. It happens over and over again. Every time you cling to a new identity, the shadow will come for it. Every time you think you've arrived, the void will open wider. Because the path of the dark chosen one is not about reaching the top. It's about dissolving the ladder. There is no destination, only deeper layers of awakening. And each layer strips away another illusion, another story, another attachment, until all that remains is presence. And in presence, there is no fear, only knowing. So what does this mean practically in your day-to-day life? It means you'll start losing interest in things that once defined you. People, places, passions, they'll start to feel like echoes. Not because they're bad, but because they're too small for where your soul is headed. You may find yourself withdrawing without explanation. You may feel like you're disappearing. But you're not. You're reappearing in a higher dimension, or a deeper timeline, one that's not built on survival, but on sovereignty. And this is where the real transformation begins. You start to create not from desire, but from alignment. You start to speak not from opinion, but from inner authority. You move, not to prove, but to express. And you begin to realize you are not here to fix the world. You are here to embody a frequency that transcends it. Because the world doesn't need more saviors. It needs more truth bearers. People who have walked through fire and come out pure. People who don't just talk about awakening, but have lived its death and resurrection. And here's the final truth. The shadow didn't choose you to suffer. It chose you to remember. To remember that you are not your story. You are not your trauma. You are not even your gifts. You are the space in which all things arise and fall. You are the witness, the observer, the infinite intelligence wrapped in temporary form. And when you remember that, you stop trying to control life. You let life move through you. You become the flute, not the song. And in that surrender, the most beautiful music begins to play. But don't expect the world to applaud. In fact, expect more silence. Because the more awakened you are, the less relatable you become. Your joy won't come from others. It will come from coherence. From being in full alignment with your essence. From knowing that even in your silence, you are shaking dimensions. Even in your stillness, you are anchoring timelines. Even in your invisibility, you are holding the grid. So I leave you with this final question, and I want you to sit with it not just today, but every day you feel lost, unseen, or forgotten. If your entire life was a preparation for this moment right now, what are you being asked to remember? Because remembrance is the final gift. And once you remember, you don't need to be seen. You don't need to be understood. You don't even need to be alive in the traditional sense. Because you've become eternal. You've become the mystery. You've become the shadow walking in plain sight. And the world may never know your name, but the universe will never forget your soul.